All right. First question for you is, did you grow up swimming in a youth swim league when you were a kid?
I didn't know there was youth swim leagues. My biggest regret is what was in grade 9 when Mrs. Boudreau, the swim coach who led the team at Harrow, asked me to come out for the swim team. She said, "Oh, you probably really have fun." And I said, "No, thank you." And I never went out. And she asked me a couple times. Probably the biggest regret of my life.
If you were able to talk to yourself at the start of your career as a professional athlete, what kind of advice would you give yourself in the water? What do you think are some key points of advice that you'd give yourself?
I think the biggest thing I would tell myself is that swimming and interaction with water is not the same as running in your interaction with land. Because I thought of myself as a good runner then when I first got into it. I was like, okay, you're pretty good at running, you're a pretty good athlete. So just apply everything you know about running to swimming. And I believe actually that probably ingrained poor pathways and incorrect ways of going about it that I'm still to this day fighting against because I ingrained them so deeply for so long. And basically that was dive in, don't think about how you're interacting with this substance, think about making it as hard as it can be, and then eventually you'll adapt to that pain, and you'll be able to tolerate more of it, and you can tolerate more and you can suffer better, then you'll get faster. And I basically did that for years and years and years and years. And really, to be honest with you, it wasn't until I met Justin here in Tucson where he said, dude, like you need to just relax. You need to take several steps backwards and you need to develop a relationship with that water because it behaves nothing like land in that on land, it doesn't give way. You push and it holds steady and then you push off and you move forward. Whereas in water, if you push too hard, it gives way. And it also is the same fluid that you're trying to go through. So it's very, very weird and very, very different from running because it's both the substance you're trying to go through and the substance you're trying to use to become solid to push yourself through the same substance. It's weird. And so applying how you think about running to swimming is not going to work ever. And so once he said that, and I still argued because I was like, oh, look, I'm a good athlete. I've been able to make my bike and my run good. Why can't I just continue to apply this and get better at swimming? And I don't believe it'll work that way. I don't believe it's ever worked that way. And so finally, after arguing with him for months on end, I finally actually relaxed. And that's when I started to listen to my hands, to what's going on in the water around me. How is my hand slipping through the water? Is my hand holding on to something? And it was from that point forward that I began to develop a relationship with the water as opposed to just fight the water and try and mold the water to myself, you know what I mean? And to behave the way I think it should behave, i.e. the way that running and biking has behaved.
So when was the first time that you swam a lap? Like to be...
In a lap pool?
Yeah, like that you got in
swimming.
Okay, I'm gonna teach myself to swim.
Well, when I signed up for the Ironman in 2009, so it was probably, I'm not sure if I went to a lap pool yet in 2009. I signed up for Ironman Louisville. A fair amount of people who come to this sport come from, running is a lot of people get into athletics through running. It's very easy. You just toss on some shoes and you go out for a run. Put your shorts and you go out for a run. And so it's very simple. A lot of people's first experience with sport is running. And so you don't have to have come from a collegiate background to, have the wiring that more effort equals more speed. That's how running, for the most part, works. It's how a lot of things work, I would say. More effort equals do better. You know what I mean? If you work hard at something, generally, you get better at it. And that is true to an extent in the water. But the problem in the water is that it's a fluid. It doesn't stay solid. And so there is a certain amount of perception required in order to grip the substance. And if you continue to not be aware of that fact and to not cultivate your perception of that reality, then you are never going to get to a level that people who are cultivating that perception are able to get themselves to. And keep in mind too, a lot of people who start young aren't even aware that they have honed and developed such an amazing perception of water, because they did it at such young ages that they probably didn't even have a vocabulary to describe or to be aware of what was going on. And in fact, that might even have been an advantage, the fact that they didn't have a lot of mentation going on while doing it, and especially not a lot of pressure on themselves, because they didn't probably really know what was good swimming, what was bad swimming, what was good and bad technique, and these sorts of things. They were just kids having fun and, listening to what was going on and with their interaction and developing a relationship with the water and learning to use the water to their advantage as opposed to fight the water. Because some people do dive in and for whatever reason, they develop a good relationship with the water. But the vast majority of people who dive in, especially as older or later in their life as adults, we have an inherent fear of water. Water will kill you. If you take on a bit of water and you can't touch the bottom and there's nothing to grab onto and you start panicking, you're in the middle of the ocean or something, you will die. It will kill you. It is an inherent fear. And I do believe that creates a lot of the apprehension and the lack of relationship with the water. And you have to be aware of that. And you have to do everything in your power to begin to develop a positive relationship with the water, to listen to the water. And, technique, all this stuff, whatever, all that stuff. You can do this beautiful forearm and have textbook technique and be very slow if you don't have a positive relationship with the water, because you will not have the perception to use that beautiful technique, this early vertical forearm and all these concepts that you watch YouTube videos about and they say you need, and you tell yourself, oh, if I just had that, or if I just looked like them. No, you won't swim as well as them if you just looked like them. That's not all they have. The foundation of all great swimmers, first and foremost, is that they have excellent perception of how much pressure and how the water is moving or lack of movement around the arms and around their body and how they're holding their core, etc., so that they continue to move through the substance and grip the substance. That is true of them all. Having an early vertical forearm or a high elbow or this or that is not true of them all. Jerry Rodriguez, a great coach who I worked with for a number of years out of his company is called Tower 26. He always said, I could give you an example of a 16-minute, 1,500 meter swimmer who exhibits every single bad technique possible, yet they're still a 16-minute, 1,500 meter swimmer. Therefore, is that your problem? Because I would always argue, oh, Jerry, I need to work on this piece of my technique and that piece of my technique, and that's why I'm not swimming fast. And he would say, I got guys who swim 16 minutes or 1,500 and who swim like that. So That was always the argument. And what did those people certainly have? They knew and they had good perception of the water, and whether they were gripping it or whether they were slipping through it, and how their body was moving through it. So when I came to Justin, the first thing he said was stop worrying about time. That's of no relevance. Of course it's relevant when you're a professional to some extent. But if you want to get even remotely in the ballpark of good swimmers, you're going to have to abandon everything you thought you knew about swimming. And the first and foremost is trying to hit what you think is a good time. The reality is what you think is a good time, unless you are Vincent Louis or Jan Frodeno, what you think is a good time is probably not a good time. They're all bad times by swimming standards. When I, would go to the pool and I would do, let's say hard hundreds, I'd be like, well, I got to hit 110 per 100. I mean, this is in yards. I've got to hit 110, otherwise it's just garbage. It's like, what? Vincent Louis thinks 110 per 100 is garbage. You know what I mean? You're on a spectrum of ability, right? The water and swimming is a vast spectrum. So get rid of those preconceptions of what is good and what is not. What you need to replace those with is good interaction, okay? I don't care if you swim, and this is basically what Justin said to me, is I don't care what the time is. I care how you create the time. Because as you begin to only swim good touches, or less muscly, as you say, or there's many ways to think about it, with better perception, or soft hands is one Justin likes to use. As you begin to do that, then you start to forget and you begin to ingrain soft hand neural pathways. And as you do that over and over and over and over, every single swim, never allowing yourself, you feel your tension coming back, not allowing that tension to take hold. As you do that over and over and over for 1,000,000 meters, 2,000,000 meters, 3,000,000 meters, you forget what it was like to do the other way, to swim the muscly way. And I'm just getting to that point now after about one straight year of saying, no, stop swimming that way. Stop over-recruiting. Stop being aggressive. There's nothing aggressive about swimming, in my opinion. Maybe when you get to the very highest levels and the only pathways you know are extremely soft pathways, perhaps then you can put force into a very soft stroke. But for us, developing swimmers, there is no aggression in swimming. You will swim slower. Yes, you have a temporary increase in speed, but it's not sustainable. And, you'll blow up and go out the back very, very quickly. So that was the foundational concept with Justin, was he likes to say soft hands, to not be aggressive with the water. It all goes hand in hand, to develop a relationship with the water, to to grip the water. Not too soft because you'll slip through it, not too hard because you'll slip through it, just right so that you actually grip the water, and when you grip it up here, maybe hopefully right around your shoulder height, you don't slip whatsoever, and you push your body forward the entire length of your arm, and then the really good guys even push off from the point that they've gripped and go another 0.5 meter to 1 meter further, and they go 2 full meters forward with one stroke because they grip right where they started, and they grip all the way through the stroke and then some. And so there's that. And then the next piece of the puzzle that has been added recently is to bring in a bit of metabolic, which really they're one and the same thing, to take lactate, to understand what's actually going on under the hood. Because basically what it does, and what I believe it will do for just about everyone who is a developing swimmer, is that you'll realize, wow, I still am just swimming really hard. Like if I tried to do this level of output in running, I'd be injured in a week. But because swimming has so little weight bearing, or has virtually no weight bearing, and it's so soft, you don't get damaged. But so you can swim constantly way too hard at way too much of an effort. But then when you actually start to soften up and to swim a bit easier, then you start to understand, even deeper this idea of interaction with the water, of being soft with the water, that you can be even softer than you thought and grip the water and move forward, and that it doesn't take very much energy to swim pretty good because your weight is literally only like 10% of what it is on land. So there's many concepts going on.
So if you were to use me as an example, of course I don't swim, but if you were to use me as an example and I jumped in the water with you and you were like, let's do hundreds on 125, and I was hitting them with you and I was like, oh, this is really easy. This is good. This is a good pace for me. But I really wouldn't be doing the workout right because my lactate would be super high. So can you explain that?
Well, swimming is a deeply internal thing. So the beauty of having some sort of a reference point is that, you have a reference point for work on the bike with power. You have a reference point as well in running because you have these little power meter pods. You have heart rate. Swimming, you don't really get. You can get heart rate now, but it's not. It's hard to get a reference point for that heart rate in the water. So the beauty of the lactate in the water is that you truly get an understanding of what's going on under the hood. And, you can't fake it, right? You say that you're swimming, I'm swimming really easy. And then your lactate's 4 millimole. I mean, you're not swimming very easy. Maybe you have grown accustomed to that level of output, but the reality is, systemically, that is not a very easy output. And yes, you can do it, but where is the ceiling? Where is the ability to improve? When you're already, basically constantly swimming moderate to hard all the time. There's very little room to improve on that. Plus, you're missing all the benefits of relaxing a bit, even more, in developing more of a relationship with the water because you're not so taxed and softening up and actually gripping that water a bit better. I certainly don't know everything about swimming. I certainly have I'm on 11 years focused. Most of my mental energy has been focused on trying to understand how to swim better. And so I have devoted massive amounts of mental energy as an adult to understanding swimming and what works and what doesn't. And, it's just like anything else, like the weight loss industry, something like that. We all want something. And people make careers off trying to give us what we want. And so there's a lot of gimmicks, there's a lot of sales pitches, there's a lot of, you need this tool and that tool, and this will help you, and if you just did this, then you'll fix it. Fads, we'll call them, diet fads, whatever you want to call them. And the reality is, I don't think it's that complicated. I think the one thing that most of us are lacking is a relationship with the water. And so no, I don't know everything. I have a lot of experience trying various things. I think I've owned probably every gadget. I have 2 full giant totes full of swim gadgets and paddles and TikTok belts, and I couldn't tell you all the things that I've purchased over the years because I've wanted to improve my swim so badly. And now I use none of those things. And I've never enjoyed swimming more, and I've never felt more hopeful that I can, I lack, that's another piece of this puzzle too, is I'm probably one of the least talented swimmers from a starting point. In any sport, you have a starting point, and my starting point was quite low. For whatever reason, perhaps it was my running background or something, but my first triathlon, I averaged for 500 meters about 2 minutes and 40 seconds per 100. And like I told you in the beginning, I swam an all-out 100 meters and swam 2 minutes, and that was all out. And I had already been swimming for a bit then, 3 or 4 months. And so that was like my starting point. And I have a really good system, to mask problems. And so, no, I don't know everything, but I have learned a lot. And thus far, it's finally starting to make sense. It's finally starting to give some clarity. I'm finally starting to love it, it always was a means to an end for me, at least in the beginning, was you got to get through the swim so you can get to the bike and the run. And now finally I'm like, I love swimming. Like swimming, I will always swim for the rest of my life because it's such a wonderful sport, a wonderful activity. Just as much as I love running, I love going out in the desert and just running, and it's silent and you're just out in the middle of nowhere. It's beautiful. Swimming is the same. It's very meditative. And with the right perspective, I know a lot of people, I have sympathy for many people because I know many people are frustrated by swimming. And I think, I think a lot of that's attitude and your approach and your orientation to swimming. And so I think if you start to really focus on developing your relationship with the water, and I know that sounds kind of corny, but that's truly what it is developing a relationship with water and feeling like you love the water, like the water is gentle and you're gentle with it, and it's helping you, and you're clearing your mind and just being aware of what's going on and all the sensations. I do believe that will take your swimming to a new level and will take your relationship with swimming to a new level. Yeah, I'm rambling on and on because the reality is if swimming could be described how to swim well, someone would have already done it. We'd all read the book and we'd all be good swimmers. The fact that there's 9,000 YouTube videos and channels, et cetera, telling you how to become a better swimmer and what you're doing wrong shows that no one can actually convey how to properly swim better. No one can convey that. You have to learn it for yourself. There's no technique you're going to ever do that's going to allow you to swim crazy fast. The foundation of all of that stuff is relationship. And so if you've made it this far, then coming from one passionate person who's desiring to be better at swimming, or at least to love swimming more, thank you for watching, and I hope that you continue to stick to it and develop your relationship with the water. It's really enjoyable.